She screamed, cried, and tried to manipulate the entire flight crew. But instead of claiming the first-class seat she so desperately craved, she became the center of a viral scandal. This is the most spectacular downfall of an entitled airline passenger you will ever witness. The plane hadn't even taken off yet, but the tension was already thick in the air. A woman, dressed head to toe in designer clothes, oversized sunglasses covering most of her face, stood in the aisle, hands trembling with rage. She practically shrieked at the flight attendant. "I paid for this first-class seat. I always sit here. This is my seat." Passengers around her started whispering, some subtly pulling out their phones to record. What she didn't know was that within just a few hours, she would become the internet's newest obsession. Like any other routine flight, I boarded the plane, found my first-class seat, and got ready for a long but comfortable journey. But just as I placed my carry-on in the overhead compartment and settled in, a sharp, demanding voice cut through the cabin. "You're in my seat." I looked up. Standing in front of me was her. Her eyes burned with entitlement, her posture rigid as if I had just stolen something precious from her. I glanced down at my ticket again. No, I wasn't mistaken. This was my seat, 4A, first class. But what I didn't know was that I was about to come face to face with one of the most unreasonable people I had ever encountered. And the moment she realized she wasn't getting what she wanted, things were only going to escalate. I took a deep breath, keeping my composure. To me, this was just a simple misunderstanding, one that could be resolved in seconds by checking our tickets. So I responded calmly. "I think you might be mistaken. This is my seat." But the moment the words left my mouth, she, who I was already starting to refer to as Karen in my head, curled her lips into a smug smirk, folded her arms, and shook her head in disbelief. "No, you don't understand. I always sit here. I fly this route all the time. This is my seat." The atmosphere in first class shifted. A few nearby passengers subtly turned their heads, intrigued by the brewing confrontation. I knew one thing for certain. There was no such thing as your usual seat on a plane. Seats belonged to those who paid for them. Simple as that. Rather than arguing, I simply held up my boarding pass, pointing to the seat number. "This is my ticket. My seat is 4A. She stared at me, her eyes narrowing behind those ridiculous oversized sunglasses. But instead of accepting reality, she let out a dramatic, exaggerated sigh, shaking her head as if she were explaining something painfully obvious to a clueless child. "You don't get it. I fly this route dozens of times, and I always sit here." Clearly, the airline made a mistake. I felt a flicker of irritation, but I kept my tone measured. "If there's an issue, perhaps you should check your ticket." And then, just like that, she switched tactics. In an instant, she went from aggressively insisting the seat was hers to dramatically flagging down a flight attendant, her voice suddenly dripping with artificial politeness. "Excuse me, flight attendant, we have a problem here." A middle-aged flight attendant, poised and professional, approached us. "What seems to be the issue, ma'am?" Karen wasted no time. Her voice, which had been sharp and confrontational with me just moments ago, suddenly softened into something delicate, almost sweet. "I think there's been a mistake in the system," she cooed. "This seat is actually mine, but it seems like he's sitting here by accident." The flight attendant, ever the professional, offered her a patient but firm smile. "All right then, I just need to check both of your tickets to confirm." Without hesitation, I handed over my boarding pass. I had nothing to hide. Karen, on the other hand, hesitated for just a moment. Then, with exaggerated urgency, she dug through her designer handbag, finally pulling out a crumpled boarding pass, so wrinkled it looked like it had been stuffed into her bag in a hurry. She thrust it toward the flight attendant with all the confidence in the world. "Here. Look for yourself." The flight attendant took the ticket, her eyes scanning the information. I noticed the faintest pause. Her face remained neutral, but I could tell she saw something wrong. She carefully adjusted her posture before speaking. "Ma'am, your seat is 23B, economy class." The air in the cabin shifted. For a split second, silence blanketed first class. Karen blinked, as if the words hadn't fully registered. A few nearby passengers leaned in, their curiosity piqued. Karen frowned. She shook her head. "No, that can't be right. I always sit here. This must be a system error." The flight attendant remained calm, but her tone lost some of its previous warmth. There is no error, ma'am. This is seat 4A, which belongs to this gentleman. Your assigned seat is in economy, 23B. The tension in the air thickened. Karen's face darkened. This was clearly not the answer she had expected. And instead of admitting her mistake and heading to her assigned seat, she exhaled sharply, clutching the strap of her handbag so tightly her knuckles turned white. Then she turned and locked eyes with me. You're young, healthy, and clearly don't need to be in first class. So why don't you just switch with me? I have a much better reason to be here than you do. I held my breath. I already knew this wasn't going to end easily. And just as I expected, things were only getting started. I stared directly at Karen. It was clear she had no intention of backing down. Why should I give up my seat for you? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Karen let out a long, exaggerated sigh like I had just asked the dumbest question in the world. Do you really need me to spell it out? She rolled her eyes. I have a medical condition. I cannot sit in economy. The seats are too cramped. I won't be able to breathe. A few nearby passengers exchanged glances. I could see some of them biting back laughter. A man sitting in economy just a few rows behind us leaned toward his wife and whispered, "So I guess all of us in economy are about to suffocate, huh?" I took a deep breath, keeping my tone calm. I understand, but I paid for this seat. If you need a better one, you can request an upgrade. Karen's eyes widened and her voice shot up an octave. I don't need to upgrade. I deserve to sit here. This is my seat. The tension in first class became suffocating. The flight attendant remained professional, but her gaze sharpened. Ma'am, I've checked your ticket, and it does not grant you a first-class seat. I must ask you to return to your assigned seat immediately. Karen narrowed her eyes. Then, out of nowhere, she smiled. A chill ran down my spine. All right, she said, her voice suddenly light, almost casual. If you won't help me, I'll help myself. And just like that, as if she had just remembered a secret weapon, Karen yanked her phone out of her bag, opened a Livestream app, and started recording. Hello, everyone, Karen began, her voice quivering with fake emotion, her eyes welling up with imaginary tears. I am being mistreated right here on this plane. They are refusing to help me, a passenger with special needs, simply because I'm not as rich as them. She turned the camera toward me, then the flight attendant, then slowly panned across the first-class cabin like she was filming some kind of social injustice documentary. I blinked. I could not believe what I was witnessing. What the hell are you doing? I asked, my patience slipping. I'm exposing the truth, Karen announced dramatically. Everyone, please share this video. Don't let this airline continue to oppress loyal passengers like me. At that moment, a middle-aged man in the row ahead spoke up, his voice perfectly calm. Who even uses Facebook for influencing anymore? A wave of laughter erupted through the cabin. But Karen? She didn't stop. She kept staring into the camera, her fake sobs intensifying. I have promoted this airline for years. I've brought them so many customers, and this is how they treat me. Karen's voice rang out, loud and theatrical, as she dramatically addressed her Livestream audience. What little of it there was. But then a voice came from the back of the cabin. Wait a minute. I know you. Every head in first class turned. A young woman scrolling through her phone suddenly gasped in recognition. You're the woman who got banned from that hotel last year for throwing a tantrum over the breakfast buffet, aren't you? A heavy silence fell over the cabin. Karen, who just seconds ago had been playing the pitiful victim, froze. Her face drained of color, then turned an angry shade of red. That has nothing to do with this, she shrieked, her voice cracking. The young woman simply shrugged. Oh, it has everything to do with this. I remember now. You flipped out because they ran out of free waffles, and security had to drag you out. From the back of the plane, a passenger burst out laughing. Another person muttered, So this isn't the first time she's tried to throw a fit to get what she wants. Karen's panic was setting in. She darted her eyes around the cabin, realizing that more and more passengers were recording her. For the first time, she looked truly shaken. But then, gripping her phone tighter, she doubled down. I will destroy your reputation, she declared. I have over 100,000 followers. If I say this airline is terrible, they will believe me. A man a few seats away snorted. You have 100,000 followers, but only 10 people watching your live stream? This time, the entire cabin erupted with laughter. Karen stiffened. She looked down at her phone, and sure enough, the viewer count was barely hitting double digits. Reality started sinking in. Karen clutched her designer bag as if it were a life raft, realizing she had been cornered. She glanced between me, the flight attendant, and the passengers now openly mocking her. And then, she did something I never expected. She ripped the phone off her Livestream, stood up straight, and screamed. "I'm not going anywhere. I refuse to sit in that awful section. You have to let me sit here." But this time, her voice no longer held any power. A sharp click echoed from behind me. I turned around, and there he was. The captain. He stood at the entrance of the first-class cabin, his piercing eyes scanning the scene. His uniform was crisp, his posture commanding, his mere presence sending a chill through the air. When he finally spoke, his voice was deep, steady, and filled with authority. "What's going on here?" The entire cabin fell silent. Karen blinked rapidly, her brain scrambling for an escape. And then, just like that, she switched tactics. The anger, the screaming, the defiance, all of it vanished in an instant. Instead, her lips quivered, her breath hitched, and in the most dramatic shift yet, she started crying. They're bullying me," she whimpered, her voice shaking. She jabbed a trembling finger at me. "I just wanted a little kindness, but they're treating me like I'm some kind of monster." Karen was making her final gamble. She was trying to play the victim, but this time, no one was buying it. The captain turned slowly to the flight attendant. What seat was she assigned? Without hesitation, the flight attendant replied, 23B, economy class. The captain's brow furrowed as he turned back to Karen. "Then why are you sitting here?" Karen opened her mouth. Nothing came out, and that, right there, was the moment she knew she had lost. The air in first class felt thick, suffocating. Karen stood frozen, her face burning red, her eyes darting frantically as she tried to find a way out of the mess she had created. But this time, there was no escape. The captain, tall and imposing in his pristine uniform, crossed his arms over his chest, staring her down with an expression as cold as steel. The captain's voice remained calm, but his authority was unmistakable. "So, what reason do you have for sitting in this seat when your ticket places you in economy?" Karen cleared her throat, trying to regain her false confidence. "There must be some kind of mistake," she snapped. "I always fly first class. I deserve to be here." But this time, her voice wasn't as strong. It wavered. The captain turned his gaze toward the flight attendant, tilting his chin in her direction. What ticket did she purchase? The flight attendant didn't hesitate. 23B, economy class. No upgrades requested or confirmed. Karen swallowed hard. She could feel the weight of every pair of eyes in the first-class cabin burning into her. No one was on her side anymore. No one believed her, "I deserve this" narrative anymore. But Karen wasn't going down without a fight. She took a deep breath, and then she changed her approach. Her voice softened, her eyes glistening with crocodile tears. "I was just trying to have a comfortable flight," she whimpered, letting out a dramatic sniffle. "You don't understand what a horrible day I've had." A few passengers exchanged glances, but none looked particularly sympathetic. The captain exhaled through his nose, his patience wearing thin. "I understand that today might not have been a great day for you," he said, his tone firm but fair. "But rules are rules. You need to return to your assigned seat." Karen clenched her handbag, taking another shaky breath. And then, she made the biggest mistake of all. "No, I'm not moving," she shrieked, her high-pitched voice cutting through the first-class cabin. "You can't force me." But this time, the reaction from the passengers wasn't just whispers and murmurs. It was outrage. "Enough already," someone snapped. "You're delaying our flight," another voice called out. "I have a connecting flight. You're making me miss it." The voices grew louder. The frustration spread like wildfire. Passengers, who had been trapped in this ridiculous situation because of one entitled woman, were done. The flight attendant did her best to keep things under control, but it was clear. Karen had crossed the line. The captain, his patience now razor-thin, turned toward the cabin doors and said, his voice clipped and authoritative, "Call security." Karen went pale. Everything happened fast. 2 airport security officers appeared at the entrance of the first-class cabin, striding toward her with purpose. One was a tall, imposing woman with a no-nonsense demeanor. The other was a burly man whose expression held zero patience. Karen staggered back, hands raised like she was a victim of some grave injustice. "Wait," she stammered, her voice cracking with panic. "I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted a little fairness. I'm a loyal customer." But security wasn't listening. The female officer spoke, her tone firm and unyielding. "Ma'am, you are disrupting this flight. If you do not return to your assigned seat immediately, we will be forced to remove you from this aircraft." This time, there was no pretending. Karen knew her situation had just turned serious. She swallowed hard, eyes darting back and forth, desperately searching for a way out. I'll sue you," she suddenly screamed. "I'll have all of you fired. Snap. The male security officer reached into his pocket and pulled out a pair of zip-tie cuffs. The entire cabin went dead silent. A few seconds ago, Karen had been screaming, threatening, demanding, but the moment she saw those plastic restraints, all of her arrogance vanished. The captain crossed his arms over his chest, his voice like ice. "You have two choices," he said. 1. Return to your assigned seat immediately and remain silent for the rest of the flight. 2. Leave this plane right now. Every single passenger's eyes were locked on Karen. She stood there, frozen. It was clear. Her mind was racing for an escape, trying to twist the situation in her favor one last time. But this time, there was no escape. And then, to everyone's surprise, Karen burst into tears. But these weren't real tears. No. These were the tears of someone who had just lost. There was no more screaming, no more threats, no more live stream, no more pretending to be a powerful influencer. Her voice cracked like a child caught in a lie. "Please, I don't want to be taken off the plane," she sobbed. I just wanted a better seat." But now, no one felt sorry for her, not a single person. The captain didn't even blink. Without hesitation, he nodded toward security. "Remove her from the aircraft," Karen screamed. "No, don't do this." But it was too late. The two security officers stepped forward and grabbed Karen's arms. And then, she was dragged out of first class under the scornful stares of every passenger. As she was forced down the aisle, the entire cabin erupted into applause. Not out of amusement, not out of cruelty, but out of sheer relief. Finally, they were free from this madness. And as Karen was escorted off the plane, I let out a long breath. But I knew one thing: this story wasn't over yet. The moment Karen disappeared through the cabin doors, some passengers shook their heads, others sighed in relief, and a few had already started recording everything. As the doors shut behind her, I sank back into my seat, finally experiencing peace for the first time since this flight began. But I knew this was just the beginning. A few minutes later, the in-flight Wi-Fi kicked in, and in the blink of an eye, Karen became the internet's latest sensation. A young guy in the row ahead suddenly burst into laughter, holding up his phone. "You guys have to see this," he exclaimed, his voice brimming with excitement. People leaned in to look at his screen. On it was a rapidly spreading Twitter post. "Woman demands a first-class seat, gets dragged off the plane. The entitlement is unreal. Airline Karen." Attached was a 30-second video, Karen screaming at the captain, throwing a tantrum, demanding her rights. And then getting hauled off by security. "Oh my God, it's going viral." A girl behind me gasped as she refreshed her feed. "It's been 10 minutes, and it already has over 50,000 views. Still didn't know she had lost." As the entire plane buzzed with excitement over the unfolding internet storm, I decided to check my own phone. I opened Facebook. And when I saw what was on my screen, I couldn't believe my eyes. Karen was still posting. Just minutes after being dragged off the plane, she had already written a long, dramatic rant on Facebook. I was just publicly humiliated and thrown off a major airline simply because I stood up for my rights. I have a medical condition that prevents me from sitting in economy, and yet they treated me like a criminal. At the end of the post, she added one final dramatic plea. "I can't believe this. Please share this and help me get justice." Two sides emerged within minutes. Karen's post exploded with comments. But the most interesting part? Two opposing sides started to form. Karen's supporters, people who had no idea what really happened. "This is outrageous. We can't let airlines abuse their power like this. We believe you, Karen. That airline needs to be boycotted." People who knew the truth, those who had already seen the viral videos. "Karen, you're lying. The video evidence is everywhere. You got kicked off the plane because you harassed other passengers, not because of a medical condition. You tried to take a seat you didn't pay for. Stop playing the victim. Karen refuses to give up. Even as thousands of people called her out for lying, Karen doubled down. She replied to every negative comment, screaming that she was being bullied, that the videos were edited to make her look bad, and that she was being unfairly targeted. I glanced at the young guy in the row ahead, the one who had first posted the video to Twitter. He was laughing hysterically as he scrolled through the endless flood of people exposing Karen. "This is only going to get worse for her," he chuckled, shaking his head. "The worst mistake yet." Just when I thought things couldn't get any more insane, a notification popped up that made the entire plane gasp. A woman behind me suddenly shouted, "She's trying to dox us." My stomach dropped. I immediately opened Facebook. And sure enough, Karen wasn't just trying to flip the story. She was actively encouraging her followers to track down the passengers on the flight. In one comment, she wrote, "Does anyone know the name of the guy in seat 4A? He's the one who ruined my life. If anyone has info, message me immediately." I blinked. I could not believe what I was seeing. Karen wasn't just trying to spin the story. She was trying to incite harassment against the people who witnessed what actually happened. A young man in economy shook his head and held up his phone. She just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because 1 minute later, the airline responded. The airline fires back. A passenger in the row ahead suddenly shouted in excitement. The airline just released a statement. Everyone scrambled to check their phones, and there it was, front and center on the airline's official page. Today, a passenger was removed from our flight due to a severe violation of airline policies. She refused to comply with crew instructions, disrupted other passengers, and attempted to claim a seat that did not belong to her. This incident has been escalated to the proper authorities. The comment section exploded. Ha! It's official. Karen just got exposed by the airline itself. Oh wow, so she didn't just get kicked off the plane. She might actually be facing charges. Instant karma hits harder than first-class turbulence. Karen disappears. But then something even more shocking happened. Just minutes after the airline's statement started spreading like wildfire, Karen's entire online presence vanished. Karen deleted everything. Every post, every comment, every Facebook rant, gone. The young guy in the row ahead stared at his phone, mouth wide open. The girl next to him, laughed. Does she really think deleting her account will make this go away? The internet never forgets. I leaned back in my seat, staring quietly out the window. Karen had boarded this flight with one belief, that she could manipulate people, bully her way into first class, and threaten the airline with her so-called influence. But instead of sitting in luxury, she was given a lesson the whole world would remember. Because from now on, Karen wasn't just a name. It was a symbol of delusion, entitlement, and complete downfall. And this story, it wasn't over yet. As the airline's official statement spread like wildfire, a ripple of amusement ran through first class. Some passengers laughed, scrolling through mocking comments, tearing Karen apart. Oh no, she didn't just lose her first-class seat, she lost her entire online reputation, someone chuckled. The young woman in the row ahead shook her head, still glued to her phone. I bet she's losing her mind right now. And she was right, because Karen hadn't given up just yet. Just when I thought the chaos had finally ended, my phone buzzed. A notification popped up on my screen, a message. From Karen. I blinked. What the hell? I muttered, hesitating before opening it. Karen. Hey, I know we didn't start off on the right foot, but can you help me? This is getting out of control. I'm being attacked everywhere. If you could just post something saying it wasn't as bad as people think, I'd really appreciate it. Please. I let out a dry laugh, a disbelieving, almost amused chuckle. This woman had just tried to steal my seat, lied about me online, and encouraged her followers to come after me. And now, she was begging me to help her escape the consequences she had created for herself? I tilted my phone toward the guy sitting next to me, showing him Karen's message. He skimmed through it before bursting into laughter. Is she serious? Does she actually think you'd help her? I didn't respond. I just closed the message. Karen had dug her own grave, and I had no reason to pull her out of it. Just a few minutes later, murmurs started spreading across first class. I looked around and saw a small crowd of passengers gathered around someone's phone. "What's going on?" I asked. A woman turned around, eyes wide with excitement. "She's been permanently banned from flying." I blinked and immediately opened Twitter. And there it was, front and center on TMZ. "Passenger removed from flight after disruption, airline confirms case handed over to authorities." Below the headline was an official statement from the airline. "After a thorough review of the incident, we can confirm that the passenger involved has been permanently banned from all future flights with our airline. Furthermore, we have forwarded the case to the appropriate authorities for further action." There was no gray area, no way out. Karen wasn't just kicked off this flight. She would never be allowed to fly with this airline again. A man a few seats away let out a loud laugh. "She's officially a meme now." He scrolled down to reveal an endless flood of jokes, videos, and memes, all mocking Karen's meltdown. First class in her imagination, economy in reality. When you think you're a queen, but you're actually just a public embarrassment. One TikTok video alone had already racked up over 5 million views in just an hour. Another passenger shook his head, voice laced with disbelief. "She's never going to recover from this." And then, the final blow hit. Karen was no longer live streaming. She wasn't screaming about injustice. She wasn't acting like she had power over the internet, because every single one of her social media accounts had disappeared. A young woman gasped, "Oh my God, she just deleted everything." I checked Facebook, gone. Instagram, nothing. Twitter, account deactivated. The guy next to me smirked and shook his head. Karen was trying to run from the internet, but what she didn't understand was one simple truth. The internet never forgets. After a flight filled with pure chaos, the plane finally touched down. I pulled my carry-on from the overhead bin, relieved to finally step off this flight without another scene. But the moment I entered the terminal, I saw her. Karen stood there, surrounded by 2 airport security officers. A stern-faced airline representative stood beside them, her voice calm but unyielding. "You have been placed on the no-fly list. You are no longer permitted to book a ticket on any of our flights." Karen's head snapped up, her face ghostly pale. "No, you can't do this to me," she shrieked, her voice raw with desperation. But the airline employee simply stared at her, unmoved. "You had plenty of chances to do the right thing," she said, "and now you're facing the consequences." One of the security officers pushed open a side door, motioning for Karen to follow. "Come with us, ma'am." Karen stomped her foot, clenching her fists, but this time, there was no one left to defend her. I rolled my suitcase out of the airport, never looking back. But I knew one thing for certain. Karen had boarded that flight believing she was the main character. But when everything collapsed around her, she realized she was the villain in her own story. And the world never forgets people like that. I stepped through the automatic glass doors, feeling like I had just walked away from a drama more intense than any Hollywood movie. But even though Karen was gone from the flight, the consequences for her were only just beginning. Because the moment I pulled out my phone after leaving the airport, I saw it. Karen was still trying to fight back, one last time. Even though she had wiped her social media accounts clean, a new post had surfaced on Reddit. Someone had shared a leaked screenshot of messages Karen had sent to her most loyal supporters. The content? "Help me sue this airline. We can't let them get away with this. I was publicly humiliated in front of hundreds of people. I lost everything. If anyone has connections with a lawyer, please reach out." Underneath the post, a comment appeared. "Does she seriously think she can flip the narrative now?" And the reply? "Not only that, she's been emailing news outlets, trying to get them to write about the injustice she suffered." I let out a dry chuckle, not because it was funny, but because I simply couldn't believe it. Karen still didn't get it. She still didn't understand that this wasn't a game she could manipulate. The reality was undeniable. She had been recorded from every angle. She had been publicly exposed at the airport. She had been permanently banned from flying, and the entire world had seen her for exactly who she was. One brutal comment on Reddit summed it up perfectly. "No news outlet will take her side because she is 100% in the wrong." And sure enough, they didn't. Just an hour later, a major news website published an official article. Woman removed from flight after attempting to take first-class seat. Airline confirms permanent ban. Below the headline was the infamous image, Karen being dragged off the plane, her face contorted in rage. This was the truth. There was no way to spin it. There was no one left to defend her. And then, the final blow came from the most unexpected place. Her own father saw it coming. A Twitter user dug up an old post from an older man, Karen's father. A tweet he had posted months ago resurfaced. "I love my daughter, but if she doesn't learn how to control her behavior, one day it's going to get her into big trouble." And now, that tweet had become a prophecy. The top reply? "Well, sir, that day is today." I climbed into my taxi, sank into the seat, and stared out the window. Before this flight, Karen had everything. A moderate online following, a small group of diehard supporters, a normal life with no major scandals. But because of one first-class seat she didn't even pay for, she had been humiliated across the internet, lost all her social media accounts, been permanently banned from an airline, possibly facing legal action, become a worldwide joke, all because she thought she was more important than everyone else. I shook my head. It was shocking how greed and entitlement could destroy a person's life so quickly. The taxi pulled up to my hotel. I stepped out, inhaling the fresh air of a new city. No more stress from the flight, no more Karen screaming. Everything was finally quiet. I pulled out my phone and reread Karen's pathetic message, her plea for me to help fix the disaster she had created. I could have responded. I could have calmed the situation. But then, I remembered everything she did. I stared at her message for a few seconds, and then I closed the app. I didn't need to say anything. Because for Karen, silence was the loudest answer of all. The next morning, when I woke up, my phone was flooded with notifications. Karen was still being mocked all over the internet. People had started making memes about her. A major news outlet confirmed that Karen was trying to sue the airline, but no lawyer would take her case. She could keep trying all she wanted. But the reality was undeniable. She had lost everything. And the worst part? No one felt sorry for her. This flight lasted only a few hours, but the lesson from it will last forever. You can't cheat reality. You can't manipulate people into giving you what you want just because you believe you deserve it more than they do. Karen thought she could control the world, but reality hit her harder than any words ever could. Now she was no longer an influencer. She was just a cautionary tale, an example of what happens when entitlement collides with reality. And that's why. No one remembers Karen for anything good. They only remember her as the woman who turned herself into a joke for the entire world. The next morning, as the sunlight streamed through my hotel room curtains, I stretched and slowly reached for my phone. I opened Twitter, and as I expected, Karen was still everywhere. But this time, not because she was speaking. No, the world was speaking about her. Videos of her getting dragged off the plane had spread like wildfire. Even people who had never flown before now knew about Airline Karen. Memes, edited clips, satire posts, they all turned her into a symbol of entitlement and greed. But there was something far worse than the mockery of the internet. Oblivion. Every viral storm has one thing in common. They don't last forever. Maybe today, the entire world is talking about you. But a week from now, they won't even remember your name. And for Karen, that process had already begun. The engagement on posts about her started to slow. The videos about her stopped trending. Soon enough, she would be just another forgotten name, lost among the countless other online scandals. A person who once had 100,000 followers was now nothing more than a faded memory. Karen wanted attention. She did everything to get it. But when she finally got it, it destroyed her. I stared at my phone, looking at Karen's last message, the one I never responded to. She had hoped that I would help her fix this, but some mistakes can't be fixed. Slowly, I deleted the message, and for the first time since boarding that plane, I felt truly at peace. Karen may have vanished from the internet, but the lesson she left behind will never fade. Because in the end, she didn't just lose a first-class seat. She lost everything. Karen boarded that plane believing she was the most important person in the world. She thought she could take whatever she wanted, simply because she deserved it more than others. But the world doesn't work that way. You can have money, fame, confidence, but if you lack humility and respect for others, everything you have can disappear in an instant. Today we witnessed a dramatic story, but it wasn't just entertainment, it was a lesson. Respect others, stay grounded. And most importantly, never believe you can manipulate the world into giving you what you didn't earn. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to Aiva Stories so you never miss another story. And if you've ever encountered a real-life Karen, share your story in the comments below. See you in the next video.